talk about this to the public comment, just to give them that opportunity, because they will step forward here and have wasted, not wasted, taking their time.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm going to call the Joint Cooperative Relations Committee meeting to order, although we don't have enough participants here at the table currently. I do recognize that there are people that are here for public comment. So at this time, Tom, are you interested in some type of why don't you go ahead and step up to the podium? And we'll hear that, and hopefully more people will show up shortly.
All right. Tom Ferry here, 1626 Water Street. Thank you very much. I know that I already handed these out to the city people, the council, so I just wanted to hand these out. I just brought a couple of them.
Thank you.
And I'm just here today to try to light a fire under everybody to get the ball rolling, and hopefully this winter have somebody purchase the marine bar, tear it down, build the deck, and start in with the proposed Newtown Art Park, which has wide support by every single person I talk to in Newtown, every property owner, every merchant, people up on in the neighborhoods, so on and so forth. And I don't want to sound like a whiner here, but I just want to go through a few things in our perspective. Okay, we in Newtown are really suffering, and especially the merchants watch as thousands of people just are whisked away out of Newtown and bypassed. I know there's a bus that goes every 10 minutes there, and you know, the town has spent collectively a lot of money. There's a new $24 million aquatic center, new fire station, new visitor center, new birth complete rehab, which is great. I love it. The old hospital got torn down, got a new library, got a new really nice tile salmon for the creek where the old one was. There's talk of rehabbing the Yates building before anything's done in Newtown. I noticed that the crosswalks have been repainted almost everywhere downtown, but not in Newtown. And then the wooden street, Hopkins Alley, was supposed to have the decking replaced, and the money was reappropriated somewhere. I would rather have the park built first and foremost, not I, but everyone in Newtown, and I could have got 5 times the signatures on the petition, but I just don't have time to run around everywhere. You know, I know that there's HARP is going on, and I was wondering, as the RFP, Mr. Bailey, has that, not Mr. Bailey, Mr. Buckler, sorry, has that been finalized? And
I will have to get back to you on that. Okay. I know that it has been. I don't know that it has been published yet. But I'll get back to you.
Okay. Well, that's a great idea and a great project. I noticed that. I just want to say this since I'm here. Part of the Hopkins Alley revitalization project includes a discussion with the property owners and also mentions the parcel of land we're talking about right in the RFP, which is the old Marine Bar site. It doesn't say the old Marine Bar site, it just says the parcel right adjacent to the crosswalk. So I'm glad that's in there. I don't know if is there a street cleaner that comes through town at all? Does anyone know?
I've seen them out.
Carl, what's
Does
the
it-
status there, street cleaning?
Tonka is DOT.
Okay. So just straight down Tongass Avenue, DOT.
Maintenance responsibility of Tonka's, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Also, the Newtown well, the CPV funds would be appropriate for this project because it directly benefits and gets rid of a horrible eyesore, the tourists. And that's what the CPV money was meant for. And I was wondering if anybody could tell me how much money from head tax funds went to the Performing Arts Center. If any, I don't even know.
I don't think any of the city went to it.
No, none of the city CPV funds.
The borough did provide some funding for the Performing Arts Center, I believe. I believe it was around $100 and some thousand, focusing on a requirement or provision that restrooms would be provided for cruise ship passengers.
Okay.
When I respond to you on your earlier question, I will copy the members here and also address the specific amount of money. I think it was $100,000 or $150,000 for the Performing Arts Center.
All right, thank you. The Newtown Art Park will change the dynamic of tourist flow quite a bit, from a trickle of a few hundred to thousands of tourists coming across the street to see the art park. I myself is going on 7 years that I bought my commercial building down there, and people talk about, well, why don't these people in Newtown fix up their buildings? It's just directly because we're only getting 50 cents to $1 a square foot. So we can't bring in enough money in order to fix up our buildings. Whereas in a lot of places downtown, they're getting, $1.50 on the back streets all the way up to, who knows, $8, $10 a square foot up front. Because I know a couple people and the rents are $30,000, $40,000 a month, and boy, if I had that coming in, you'd see probably a third story go on there. We just want things to be, as it stands right now, we just want things to even up, and right now they're lopsided like this. And so I know that there's infrastructure planned and lighting and underground utilities, all the stuff to do with HARP, but that takes time and it can come later. Something like the art park could be done this winter, and that's what we're hoping. And it could be done this winter, and next summer could be a really good summer for Newtown. And there's empty lots back there in Hopkins Alley that people are ready to build on. There's a lot of things in the work between all of us folks down there that want to definitely improve the area and get our rents up to where we can afford to do things. And as soon as we hear that that whole project is going to go ahead, you're going to see a lot of activity down there, a lot, immediately. There's
Does anyone have any questions?
Carl, what's the status on the Hopkins? Didn't we split that into 2 years?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So there will be work down there this year?
My public works director isn't here, but that's the game plan, assuming we can get to it.
We turned that into a 2-year project, so they will be down there on Hopkins Alley replacing that. And then has the RFP gone out on that Hopkins Alley thing with the?
I don't believe it has, but I indicated earlier when that question was raised that I would get back to Mr. Ferry and to the committee members here.
Because on the city side, Tom, we utilize that to get us. We'd love to get something going down there park. We just don't know how much it's going to cost.
Right.
And so we got to have the cost so we know what we're dealing with. And so that's what we got to push. And I'll keep pushing. No problem.
Carl, on what he mentioned about the crosswalks repainted everywhere, is that just something that they're getting to soon, or is that
Again,
some issue?
It's an ongoing issue with the state. We do the crosswalks, even if they're on Tongass and downtown proper.
Oh.
Traditionally, we haven't gone as far as Hopkins Alley. If the council wants us to take on that responsibility, we certainly can do so.
So is the state going to do it?
The state has been doing crosswalks this year, and they've been down in the Jefferson area specifically. I can make that inquiry.
Yeah, if you could, we'll check on the crosswalks. We're going to be doing stuff on Hopkins. Tom, give me a call next week and keep in touch with me so we can on the Hopkins out. I mean, not the Hopkins, but the whole Newtown revitalization stuff. Let me keep in touch with me. So
Right.
I'll get the update.
Okay.
We'll go from there.
I just want to say a couple more things
Yeah, go ahead.
before I get out of here. I think the most important thing for HARP is that you go ahead and get all the addresses to everybody in Newtown and all the stakeholders, commercial property owners, everybody, and like I said, send out a questionnaire and have a meeting that we can go to when everything's all ready to go. And I just wanted to ask one more thing. Now downtown, is that going to happen? The $8 million digging up of Mission and Main Street to redo the sewers and all that kind of stuff?
The state has got a plan to redo the roads. We haven't found any money to go ahead and replace any pipes or sewers or anything. Maybe some of that we can hit some of the worst ones and see if we can find any money. Is that correct, Carl?
We've got a contract and final negotiation with Doll HKM to do a 33% design for water and sewer, just to get some cost estimates that the council will be able to take a look at.
And so the very center part down there between the Coliseum and the old Little Switzerland, that whole intersection is going to be torn up at some point. Is that?
The intent is to go from the tunnel to Tatsuda's. My understanding of the state's project, they're going to be doing
We won't be in the middle of that.
resurfacing, curbs, sidewalk, storm drainage, but it will just be limited to basically that section of Tongass between the tunnel and Tatsuda.
I see. So it's just going to go straight down here and around the corner. It's not going. Okay.
And then there'll be intersection work done at Dock and a couple of the other intersections.
Okay. I misunderstood what I was reading about then. All right. Well, that's about all I have.
I just had one comment. You've been to the city, and I think you've been in front of the borough before, and obviously your passion for the project is quite evident. My only concern, and I've said this at a council meeting as well, is that will the other property owners really step up to the plate and participate? And we don't have any guarantee of that happening. And I guess you're the only person that ever comes to the podium to present any information. No one else in the area
Right.
has
Well,
ever. And I know you've gotten signatures, and that's great.
Yeah. Well, I talk to everybody all the time, and they all ask me. They call me or they stop me and they ask me and say, "Well, what's going on?" And so I guess I'm the spokesperson, but that's why it's so important with the HARP project to have a meeting, all the
Exactly.
people.
Yeah, I would really
And then
like
you-
to see some more.
And then you will
feedback.
you will see the support, and you know, you go, you know, give the mail outs and all that stuff, and the people will come to a meeting, and then we can form a, you know, official Newtown Property Owners Association or something like that,
Okay.
instead of some ad hoc thing we got going right now.
Are there any other questions?
All right, well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Agnes Moran, 327 South Point Higgins, and I'm here in an unofficial capacity. I'll do this really quick. I know you guys have a real packed agenda. I just wanted to give a quick update on the Ocean Alaska grant that's in process. It got Four Hands direction, and I'm here, not them, because they're all out doing oyster stuff, so you have to put up with me. We got Four Hands direction, or they got Four Hands direction from the Borough Assembly at the last meeting to go ahead and submit a formal grant proposal. And that will be coming in front of the Assembly on the 17th of June. In there, they're anticipating looking for 2 years operational. Right now, I'm just going to give you rough numbers because they're working really hard on their numbers. I appreciate imaginary numbers in the theoretical, their value in the theoretical environment, but in the real world, I really like to have real valid numbers. And they're working really hard on their numbers. They're having a lot of folks look at them, both financial folks, industry folks, and so they're putting together a pretty, I think, solid package, which is why we pushed it out. They pushed it out till the 17th. But right now, they're roughly looking at $150,000 for 2 years from the borough, and then they're going to be looking at approaching the city for $50,000 each year for 2 years. And they'll probably be looking for a sponsor or some indication from the city side that that is something that you folks are interested in. It's not, they're pushing forward now, and they're calling it the Southeast Alaska Mariculture Industry Initiative, because this is very focused on kick-starting the mariculture industry in Southeast Alaska. And that's what their focus is. It's not on any research and development. It's just on nursery, hatchery, propagation, getting the seed out there, getting it available, getting those leases that are running unleased back into production. So that's what their primary focus is with this initiative. And so at that, I've given you a heads up. If you have any questions, I can answer them, or Bill's going to be here. I think he has it under new business for you guys. Questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard? Seeing none, let's move on to unfinished business. We have the non-area-wide 911 service fee subject up first. And we were given some background information on this endeavor, which was useful. And there is a proposal from the borough that we endorse their last proposal, which is an annual base rate of $5,500 per service area plus $10 per dispatched call. And that we bring those back to the respective governing bodies for further discussion and review. With that said, is there any comments, questions? Someone would like to start? Lou.
Well, I'm glad that they, the borough, Dan, came up with a proposal. I'd like, before we decide to send it to our bodies, I'd like to make a counter proposal. I know the council is going to be discussing it next Thursday, but I'm not, I mean, I'm glad we're in the right direction, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the amount that we're at. So I'd like to see the council give the manager a little direction and see what we can come up with before the next meeting.
Any other comments, questions?
Did you want to flesh that out any?
Well, I wanted to get well, I wanted to talk to other council members to see. I'm not looking to. I'm not expecting the world, but I'd like to see what some of the other council members are thinking. That's why we have it on our agenda, and I have thoughts in mind, and we'll see if it's enough. I don't want to negotiate it at the table here.
Oh, no, and we don't have the authority to, but
No,
I just,
Did you have another question?
I just wondered if the borough manager wanted to add anything to how he came up with those numbers or not.
I would be more than happy to provide some comments if you'd like.
Yeah, regarding your proposal.
Okay. First of all, thank you, and my memorandum, 2.5-page memorandum, summarizes the 3.5 years that this issue has been discussed and debated between the city of Ketchikan and Ketchikan Gateway Borough. Actually, I thought that the city's position in 2010, reflecting on it, that was characterized as a reasonable fee of $7,500 for each of the two service areas. I would happen to agree with that. I think it's a reasonable fee, and that's what the proposal reflects. I will say that in the event that there cannot be agreement reached between the borough and the city, we are in discussions with other entities, in particular the statewide coordinator for E911, the Alaska State Troopers, and the E911 coordinator has in fact suggested that, and we have approached the municipality of Anchorage, as ironic as that might be, to see if we can have cooperative relations with the municipality of Anchorage in terms of dispatching if we can't have it with the city of Ketchikan. So I'd be happy to discuss, again, the fee is, it's reflective of the cost, total cost, even though the costs have escalated, the deficit has escalated between 2010 and 2013 by 60.6%. The cost that, and the proposal that's presented for consideration is reflective of a base rate and a unit cost that approximates what was characterized as a reasonable fee in 2010.
I have a question for the city manager, if I may. How did things change so drastically in the 3-year interval that this was first, the discussion first began?
Councilmember Carlson, a number of different things happened in terms of how the city approached dispatch. We used to have 2 separate dispatch services, one solely for police, one solely for fire. And we consolidated into one integrated dispatch system.
Carl, can you move the microphone closer? I'm not picking it up on the, and tip it down a little bit. Sorry, thanks.
Went into an integrated dispatch system, and there were several upgrades associated with that, and that is one of the reasons we did see the escalation. Dan and I met on this, and I asked Dan to put together a proposal that he thought was fair and acknowledged what I would call the borough's avoided cost. The cost being what they would have to incur if they had to provide their own dispatch. He and I, with all due respect, I don't think are ever going to see eye to eye on this issue. If the borough can contract with the state troopers or the municipality of Anchorage, more power to them. Essentially, I have this coming to the council, Dan's proposal, and I'm seeking direction from the council as to what it wants to do. Dan's right. We've got more than 3.5 years invested in this. I'm ready to move on.
So I guess I'm not getting the clarity I was asking for. In 2010, it was proposed $7,500, and then fast forward 3.5 years, and it's a quite different number. And if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying it's because of the consolidation of the 2 units?
$7,500 was a proposal that was put together between my office and the former fire chief. It was done more in an attempt just to get recognition that the borough ought to pay something. This go around, we took a look at our actual cost, what is covered and what isn't covered by the 911 fees that everybody pays on their telephone. And it's a substantial difference. Based on the 2013 budget, for the total integrated dispatch, we have an unfunded deficit of about $827,000. We took approximately half of that, recognizing that dispatch does both police, fire, and EMS. Our original proposal to the borough was to try to apportion that one half of the unfunded deficit based on population. If that had been accepted, the borough would have looked at something about $155,000, while the city would have picked up $258,000 of that unfunded deficit. Under Dan's proposal right now, if you apply it to the 2012 calls, the borough would be paying $14,700, and our portion of the quote-unquote fire unfunded deficit would be about $388,000. I just don't think the disparity is going to be overcome. So I'm seeking council direction, how they want me to respond to the borough's proposal, and I'll follow that direction accordingly.
Mr. Bailey, and then Lou.
I can defer to Lou, and then I'd be glad to chat it.
Well, first of all, this isn't a fall on your sword issue. If we can get the borough to pay, come by and add to helping with the cost, that's great. I don't think we're expecting to get every dime we'd love to get, but I'd like us to make another offer. And if they can help contribute, great. I'm not going to be in any way supporting of us not taking the calls, but I think we can work together and throw out some more ideas, and maybe we can find some. We're all here together, and we all have to live here together, and we can work this out and see what we can get on this. And we're not going to have the borough call Anchorage to get their phone calls answered. So let's take it as we go, and throw out some new ideas maybe, and see if anything sticks. It's not a major issue for me in any way, shape, or form. I'll try to get some help on the cost, but I'm not going to make this a big political issue. So let's do some more talking.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I appreciate your continued support. It is one island. It is public safety, and that's the bottom line. We shouldn't have to go outside, and we should be able to find a cooperative measure to solve this puzzle. My concern, however, when we're talking about some of the upgrades that was spoken to by the city manager, I completely disagree with, in that there's 3 levels of supervision that are put in there that are also being funded: the police chief, the deputy chief, and then the dispatch supervisor, along with the evidence custodian, which for the life of me I couldn't even begin to understand how that has any relationship whatsoever to a dispatching requirements, let alone the 911 upgrades. I'm separating the 2 items regarding 911 upgrades versus the dispatching, as the city manager had evidenced previously. So I will hope that this will be a reasonable cost. And however, if it includes everybody but the kitchen sink and the plumber and the electrician, I would not be in agreement with that. And I don't wish to be callous or facetious about that comment. I'm certainly not trying to stir the pot or ignite more fires under this issue, but I think there needs to be a reasonableness as to the cost to which we actually incur. And it doesn't include 3 levels of supervision to a specific dispatcher, but I look forward to further comments with the mayor and with the city managers and certainly the city council to discuss this issue, and let's get this behind us and reach a fair and equitable, reasonable offer, and let's move on.
Just for the record, Assemblymember Bailey, based on conversations I did have with the borough manager, the evidence custodian was removed from the calculations, and the figures that I last supplied Dan reflect that. What's not included in that figure, however, is the cost of the time that the fire chief puts into dispatch. So just for the record.
Thank you.
I just had one comment about the proposal. I think what we had seen previously were just flat rates, and the new proposal has a per call component to it now, which is currently showing at $10 per call. My only thought on that is I think that we might end up spending more money on the whole tracking and billing process of trying to somehow submit for those fees than maybe that per call amount would really be of value. So that was just one of the concerns I thought in terms of record keeping, bookkeeping, billing, receivables, and stuff like that. At $10 per call, I think we'd be behind before we started.
May I comment? Thank you. I agree with you. The revised structure was in response to a request from the city manager that he, if I interpreted it correctly, he was unwilling to discuss further a flat rate proposal. So asked for a base rate plus a variable rate. I fully agree with you. And in terms of the discussion about the costs and that the city manager indicated, again, the proposal that I put forward is proportionate in terms of the cost and the number of calls. I mean, the two service areas represent roughly 3%, 2.8% of the calls received, and some notion that they should pay 50% of the costs incurred in. Again, I would agree with the city's characterization in 2010 about the $7,500 charge being a reasonable one.
Thanks. Are there any other comments, questions? Yes.
I think it's, the details here obviously are contentious, but I think that the concept that the borough should pay a portion of it is not contentious, that we want the borough to pay a portion of it. And I look forward to some resolution that's agreeable to both governments.
Well, it sounds like we are, at the city, are going to be discussing this more in June. So hopefully we will be able to give our manager some more direction as to a resolution and a way to find a happy medium for everyone. If there aren't any other comments or questions on that topic, I'd like to move on to the mass notification system for the city of Ketchikan. I'm not sure if we have any updates on this. There wasn't anything particularly in the packet. I know at the local emergency response committee meeting, and I'm not even sure what that whole committee's name is, there was discussion about it as well, so it's obviously out in the community, and there were a variety of different agencies involved in that. I was actually, it actually really gave me a much more comprehensive awareness of really what that involves in terms of our community and the safety aspects of it. And I realized that my office is at the bottom of one of those dams that broke a while back, and it actually brought a lot more attention to the subject for me. So if anyone has any updates, questions, or comments.
Well, just for the record, the direction that I received from the council was for the fire chief and I to pursue grant funding for 2 of these units, one for Ketchikan Lakes and one for Carlano Lake. That's what we're going to do. If we're successful in getting that grant funding, any units or equipment that we buy, the fire chief will be instructed to work with the borough to make sure what we are procuring can fit into a borough-wide system if and when the borough decides to move down that road. But right now, we're just going to worry about the 2.
I was glad to hear that one. But what is the timeline on that grant process? Is there
Frank, can you address that?
Frank Sheriff, Fire Chief, City Ketchikan. As far as the timeline on it, there's a few different grant funding organizations out there, so I can't give you a hard answer on that. I believe it'll be June or July will be SHSP comes about, and that'll be in conjunction with the borough, so we would be probably talking with Richard Harney in the borough manager if they would be interested in funding it through that avenue. There's also some NOAA funding and a few different arenas out there that we can look. So it's an ongoing process. Of course, everything would come back to council through the manager's office and be coordinated with the borough.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Is not the borough looking at a borough-wide plan that's coordinated with, I mean, the purpose of this committee is coordination if we can have it. And maybe you could fill me in on that. Thank you.
Certainly. Borough officials have met with city officials and discussed this topic recently. I've had discussions with the LEPC chairman. There are indications that the LEPC will be addressing this topic. It's the appropriate body, I think, to get some feedback from. Questions have been raised about what is the best mass notification system. Is it a siren telling you either to run downhill in the event of a dam break or to run uphill in the event of a tsunami, that you can't figure out which way you're supposed to run, or reverse 911? So the LEPC chair will be addressing this with the LEPC. There's also a question about the need for a realistic assessment of some of the threats that are perceived and how best to respond to that. So we do understand that the Assembly is serious about it. I've indicated that to the city manager and the LEPC chair, and we'll continue to keep you informed and other Assembly members.
I just want to stress my interest in it being as much as possible coordinated with the city and the borough.
We are working very well with the city on it.
Thank you.
If there's no other comments, we'll move on to the joint community agency funding process. And I'll ask Assemblymember Bailey to open discussion on that, please.
It's been brought forward previously on several occasions. We've had numbers of discussions on this issue, and it was an attempt to try to, for lack of better words, more convenience those who are requesting granting the grants themselves, rather than going to both the city and to the borough on separate occasions. And I was in hopes that we could move forward with some kind of recommendations on this. I know I think there was supposed to be a discussion between the two managers concerning this grant application. Forgive me, I'm not aware of any of the end result of that, of those discussions. If I could ask for your indulgence on that.
Certainly. The committee has a memorandum from me included in the packet, which went to the city manager, presenting my review of the prospect of a consolidated grant process. I see no impediments to it. Actually, it's the timing is a lot easier accommodated than I expected at the beginning. So the information is out there, included in this meeting packet. My suggestion is if the two bodies want to proceed, that there should first be a careful identification of what particular goals are intended to be accomplished by the consolidated effort, and then we can design a process around that.
My question is for Lou. We in the city had a committee that worked on our grant process. Do you think it would be appropriate this time that we ask that committee to put together a set of goals that they would like to see,
Well,
so that we can start comparing notes and find out?
Well, I think that I don't know if we have a process. The committee, what we do now is we give it to the 5-member committee. The council just sets how much money they're going to be able to give out to community agencies, and then they divide it up amongst them. The question was just, with Alan, was should the borough be involved? But I don't, from reading the note, how many agencies do you actually fund? Community agencies.
There's a total of 23 between the city and the borough, roughly.
How many does there? I mean, are we talking? What agencies are we talking about? Because it says you only have 4 coming up for this next year.
No. No, I think there's a difference of 4 between the city and the borough. So we're remarkably similar in
Are
terms.
they a lot of the same people? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that was the gist of, since instead of both agencies having to deal with this, they all wanted to throw in their money into the same process and divvy it out. That was the only question. I mean, who determines how much money goes into it is up to the city council and up to the borough assembly. This committee would be here just to be able to deal with all the agencies and make the grants. So
The last page of the packet shows
Oh, there it is.
So instead of duplicating the process, Alan was thinking of doing it as just one. I think the system that's been set up has been pretty good. I don't know how we'd break down, I mean, however many people you guys wanted to put on the board or whatever. I mean, right now it's just 5, 3 council and 2 at large. I mean, however that works, so be it, no biggie. And I don't even care who's on, how many counts or whatever are on there. I really like the process. I was dead against it in the beginning, but it's been so nice not having to deal with it at the council table, and the process has been very good. Bob Sievertson led the original, and they mapped it out really well. So if the borough's interested, great. If you want to suggest some changes and maybe talk about that, I recommend that we do have members of the committee that have been involved talk with you also. So, I mean, we're not looking to change anything, just the opportunity to join it if you want. And we're going to just continue doing it the same way we've been doing it. So.
Just FYI, the committee did have some pretty strong feelings last year about tightening up the process a little bit and changing the form. So I think they're going to be meeting one more time to do that.
I know appreciate Mr. Stevenson's work on this issue, and I know that Assemblyperson Moran and myself were in the beginning of this process reviewing how could we possibly coordinate together, and I appreciate Mr. Stevenson's hard work on this. Our application process is almost very similar, and again, Assemblyperson Moran was a part of that and was able to assist in developing that form, and its mirrors or is quite close to that of the cities. So without any further discussion, I would certainly like to propose if we could bring this forward to the borough and see what goals specifically that we would be looking at, and present that to the next meeting if we can, or to whomever we can submit this to, that will then get this process underway. I think it's to the advantage of our community, and certainly the goals will remain the same, just to better serve our community, and it would allow the applicants to simply go one place, one time, and then whatever the composition of the committee, I would certainly hope, and I'm sure it would be not a problem to have an equality of representation. That part's not an issue. I have little doubt. So.
Yes.
On the committee, it shouldn't be a big problem. I have to fight to get the people on the committee. So.
Okay.
The borough wants all 3 of our spots. They got it.
No, we don't want all 3 of your spots, but yeah.
I'm just trying to anticipate difficulties. There may be some things that are appropriate, or at least the city council thinks it's appropriate to fund, but the borough somebody does not, and vice versa. And as you see that, there are a number of things this last year that the majority of them were funded by both, but there are a few that were only funded by the city council and a few that were only funded by the borough assembly. So that's something that would have to be thought about pretty carefully, how this committee would function. And the other comment is, if there is representation from both bodies, the committee could get pretty big, and that's often quite cumbersome. I think it's an opportunity that we should pursue, but I think we should pursue it cautiously.
I think that, it's not a huge issue, for either entity at this time, but I think that it could certainly be streamlined, and I think it would help the agencies that are looking for these grants as well to only have to go through the process once. I was on the committee 2 years ago, and I will say I have done a lot of painful things more than once, but I absolutely refused to be on that committee a second time. It was really, really hard to work through that process, and we had a good structure to it, but there was only so much money and so many different ways you could give it out. One of the things I think that we identified as a problem was I don't think we had a real clear definition on whether we were doing grants for capital improvements or operational expenses, and was there a difference between the two of those. So I think as that process in our organization matured, those things were tightened up a bit as well. But I think for everyone's sake, if it could be streamlined into one entity and one process, it'd probably be a lot less painful for everyone involved. But certainly, you know, there has to be that real strong set of goals, criteria that just has to be adhered to. That's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, and I don't anticipate this being something that would happen for a few years, but I do want to remind people of the Ketchikan Community Foundation, and it may be that sometime in the future they could play a part in this in administering grants, but I don't see that as happening very soon. They're just beginning right now, and they will have to get their feet wet and grow and gain in their capability.
Yes.
With what limited knowledge I do have regarding the foundation, it is not intended to replace that to which we are, both the city and the borough are providing granting funds. That is not their purpose and our intent that I'm aware of. So they're a foundation, and the need for our community to receive these grants are separate from what their purpose and what they're going to be providing at this time. The other issue that that it's important to realize that there is limited amounts of funds, and it's an issue of fairness. It's always, and that's, I think, when you're making those decisions, when people are treated fairly, when organizations are treated fairly, and they're all on the same level, even playing field, that's when it is difficult decisions to make. But it is important to make those decisions because it's also accountability and responsibility to the public. These are public funds. So there's no reason why we can't cooperate and coordinate together and to keep government down, or to keep the bureaucracy down to the extent that allows for a clean and streamlined process. There's no reason for that. There may be some areas that we simply have no authority to fund, and we understand that on the borough, and that doesn't prevent the city from funding those items. Conversely, there may be some areas that the city simply does not want to involve themselves with. Certainly this process would not prevent us from continuing to move forward if there was that need that was provided to the committee. So I don't see any, I see very few impediments, and I see nothing but win-win on this, and I look forward to continued discussions and seeking those goals. We can move forward with this thing, and I would hope we're not waiting for 2 years for this. I would hope we would be able to reach an agreement that we can begin this process within the next year. Thank you.
All right. We only have a few minutes left for our meeting today. Our next item is new business brought by Assemblymember Rotecki. Do you have enough time to present that now, or would you like to postpone until?
Oh, I was just going to give a brief update. So, and I would welcome any questions from members here. Oceans Alaska has submitted a request for operating funds for the borough. They're working hard with financial experts to really tune up their business plan so it's as good as can be done, because of course it's just a plan. It isn't the final product. The obvious question is, well, okay, operating funds for 2 years, what's next? And clearly what is very important is, well, it's just assuming that we want a robust mariculture industry in Southeast, which I think would be extremely valuable in our economy here. the facility they have right now is undersized, and therefore it is inefficient. So the next step would be to move to a larger facility. You might ask why they have such a small facility to begin with, and that's because initially it was designed to be a training facility, and then something, when its planning started, that no one anticipated was the seed shortage, and then representatives of industry, I think it was a broad variety of farmers and industry people who buy and process oysters, and government said, wait a minute, the real issue here is seed shortage, which nobody anticipated 3 or 4 years ago. And so they made the transition to trying to provide the seed for the farmers that they are not able to get from anybody. In fact, I think even this year, 2 years, there was no way to even get the larvae to the hatchery. But right now we have a functioning hatchery that, thanks to the many people that worked on it and the money from the state that came through the borough, and I don't know if there were other funds they got for particularly this hatchery. We Ketchikan, are providing the only hope for the growers in Southeast Alaska and Oceans, Alaska, well, as Assemblymember Rand pointed out. They're trying to separate a production mariculture facility from their other projects, and that's specifically what they're talking about in this grant request, is something that is production-oriented, and they're calling it the Southeast Alaska Maritime Industry Initiative, and that would be, the goal would be to build a larger facility that would be able to meet the demand and, very importantly, would be self-sustaining. It would no longer need any government assistance once they got to there. That'll require capital investment of all the government players that are willing to play, and I think they're hoping to get money from both the state and the feds, and I'm sure I've missed 100 things, so I'm open to questions if people want to ask questions, because I've been talking with particularly Tom Henderson, their hatchery manager, a whole lot, and so I have a lot on my brain if anybody wants to pick at it.
Anyone?
No questions, that's fine too.
Well, thank you for the update. So, at this time, we have a review of subject for our next meeting. Is there anything near and dear?
Well, so far, the 911 service fees will be back on.
Yeah.
Do you want the community agency thing to come back next meeting, or to?
Would that be sufficient time for?
I have given my insights in it, and if you're going to ask for a direction from the Assembly, is that the plan?
If that could occur, yeah.
Are we ready for that one? On the community grant agency for next month, are we ready to ask direction from the council as to how to determine the goals? Or
Well, I think if the borough signs into it, then maybe we should then immediately get people interested in the committee so they can sort of reform what we already
Right.
have.
they'd like to have that back on for next month.
That's right.
We can always drop it from the agenda.
Anything else?
What would be an appropriate last, I guess, Member Bailey would be the chair next meeting. When would be the last minute for adding something if there is an issue that comes up that we're not aware of
For the agenda items?
for the agenda items for the next meeting?
Is there a
That would be
deadline?
up to you guys. I'm not sure. I think Deanne tries to get things out at least a couple weeks ahead of
Yeah.
time as far as knowing what's going to be on the agenda.
It's usually 2 weeks, and
2 weeks in advance?
2 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
So it would be mid-June.
So not long, yes, thank you.
Okay.
near and dear to me is the shoreline pumpings.
Okay.
If there's any update that could be provided with, would be appreciated. I'm not sure it's had an opportunity to be presented to the city council yet. Shoreline is eagerly awaiting.
It was presented.
Yeah, we did discuss shoreline.
Oh, I'm sorry, and the result was?
As I advised Manager Bockhorst, the direction we were given was to advise the borough that the city's preference was for the borough to approach it on an area-wide basis, excluding those jurisdictions that are already served by a municipal wastewater system. Saxman and that portion of the city that's already served not be included, but everybody else in the borough would be. That's the direction the council gave to me. I've conveyed that to the borough manager.
And what that does is make it so anybody that's not on our sewer system is eligible for the borough.
The pumping, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Would that then not require further city action?
I don't believe so.
You guys would have to,
Oh, so you're throwing it at us, okay.
you guys have it now non-area wide. And I think what we said, if you guys just changed it to area wide and excluded people already served by the city, then everybody's eligible except for the people served by the city. Does that make sense?
And Saxman.
And Saxman. If you want to.
I don't know if you want to take the time here, but obviously.
Oh, we have 2 minutes.
If the borough takes on the responsibility area-wide, then it can delegate, I believe. I haven't spoken with a borough attorney about this, but just similar to what we have done with regard to planning. We have area-wide planning powers. We delegate certain of those to the city of Ketchikan. The same with economic development, area-wide planning, area-wide economic development powers by the borough delegated to the city within the city boundaries. So the question could arise, what if the city runs in, if we have area-wide powers for wastewater disposal and the city abandons or chooses, if there are problems with the infrastructure and they choose to walk away from it. We have the power. So it's something to be carefully considered. It would be a very simple system, I would think, but we brought forward, and that is allow Shoreline to participate in the borough's pumping system. That's a very simple operation. Trying to take on area-wide sewage, wastewater, it has potential pitfalls.
So let's have that as an agenda item for next month. The meeting next month is June 28th at the Assembly Chambers at noon, and it would be greatly appreciated if people would be there on time so we could fit everything into the 1 hour that we need. At this time, are there any committee member comments? Start with you.
Apologies for being late.
Apologies being late, but also on that pumping thing, we did that thinking it was going to make it easy.
We really did.
So, I mean, we're not against Shoreline doing the pumping. We just thought we were making it easy. So whatever comes, I mean, we're in support of helping out Shoreline.
This pumping thing, and I'm quick, it's turned into a snowball. That's with some potential consequences. And like most things, I just like to be able to open the door first, and if there's a need down the road that is not going to cause great harm, then certainly there may be advantages to other people participating as well, so I understand that. And if we could open the door by allowing Shoreline starting out, that'd be great, but we'll wait for the next further discussions and meetings.
No comment. I just wanted to close things up and thank everyone for coming today, and certainly as items come up for discussion here, if there's a comment or some piece of information that you want to provide for us that we may not have in front of us for consideration, I'd really appreciate if you could step up to the podium and help us out. Otherwise, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and we will do this again next month.
Thank you.